Moonlight dripped through the fractured hull of the Celesta wreck in pale, trembling ribbons. Dust motes drifted lazily in the beams, as if caught in a timeless ballet. Jacques Hawk pressed his back against the cool metal of a bulkhead, heart hammering. In his chest, every tale he'd heard about the ancient vessel had warned of danger, of collapses, rogue defense systems, and the ghosts of its long-dead crew. Yet nothing in the stories matched the hush of this place. A cathedral of steel and shadow that seemed to breathe around him. At 17, Jacques was the youngest scavenger in the Ember clans, known for his sharp instincts and restless curiosity. While his peers pried scrap from rusted outposts or traded salvage in the dusty bazaars of oblivion, Jacques had spent years studying fragments of holoscript and stolen star charts, piecing together whispers of the Celesta wreck's location. It was said the ship had belonged to the Starscar fleet, a fabled legion that vanished centuries ago, leaving only rumors of a vessel lost beyond the outer rim. Now, cradling a makeshift lamplight, a glowing crystal embedded in a handheld generator, Jacques slipped deeper into the wreck's belly. Every corridor branched into labyrinthine passages, each lined with corroded conduits and half-buried crates. Somewhere in this maze lay the control deck where, according to the fragments he'd decoded, the ship's core systems could be awoken. If he succeeded, he'd claim a prize beyond any clan's wildest dreams. He paused at an intersection, marked by a half-erased insignia, a star encircled by twin wings. Jacques traced the outline with a fingertip. The emblem glowed faintly under his touch, a breadcrumb left by whoever had shut the vessel down so long ago. He exhaled, steeling himself, and pushed on. Rounding a bend, he found it, a massive access door, its surface tangled in vines of biosensor filaments that pulsed with an otherworldly bioluminescence. The vines seemed alive, slithering over the metal like curious serpents. Jacques' jaw tightened. He fumbled in his satchel, producing a small knife wreathed in blue sparks, his only defense against the ship's living wiring. With careful precision, he severed the filaments, which recoiled as if offended, then shrank into the recesses of the door frame. The door's control panel was ancient symbols carved into hardened alloy, worn smooth by time. Jacques knelt and cleaned the surface with a cloth. He had memorized the pattern, one downward arrow flanked by two crescents. Placing his palm flat against the panel, he felt a buzz of energy course through the back of his hand. The panel slid open with a shuddering groan that echoed down the corridor, stirring up clouds of dust that danced in his lamplight. Cold air rushed out, smelling faintly of ozone and stale coolant. Beyond lay a vast chamber, the ship's command deck. Consoles arrayed in semicircles rose from the floor like silent sentinels, their surfaces dark and lifeless. Overhead, a dome of fractured transparent steel gave him a glimpse of the star-pocked void. The image stole his breath. Beyond the wreck's iron ribs, the barren expanse of Ares moon spread out in stark gray, ringed by a thin halo of atmosphere. Jacques swallowed. He should turn back. Clan law forbade intrusion into fallen fleet vessels. But as his gaze swept the consoles, he saw indicators of latent power. A row of pulse conduits still faintly glowing, a power coupling port humming with residual charge. Somewhere beneath him, the ship's heart still beat in slow, steady thumps. He crossed the deck and climbed onto the central command dais. His fingers traced the glyphs on the main console symbols for power, navigation, and life support. The scripts pulsed, reacting to his touch. He drew a breath and tapped the glyph for power. First, nothing. Then, a low rumble like distant thunder. Lights along the deck flickered and sputtered to life. Holographic schematics of star systems blazed into existence before him, ghostly blue lines etching paths through the cosmos. The hiss of venting air filled the chamber as life support systems awakened, dispelling decades of stagnation. Jacques' heart thundered at the sight. He had done it. He had awakened the Celesta wreck. For a moment, the deck fell silent again, as if the ship itself were taking stock. Then, from hidden recesses, mechanical arms and panels began to shift. Rows of sleeper bots dormant guardian. Robots emerged, their joints creaking, optics glowing cerulean. They formed a ring around the dais, filling the chamber with the measured sound of synchronized movement. Jax froze. The tailies had never mentioned guardians. He glanced around, panic rising. These sentinels were built for war. Armored plating, reinforced limb joints, and weapons ports blinking open like hungry eyes. Yet they stood at ease, their heads cocked as if studying him. A synthesized voice resonated through the chamber's speakers, calm, curious, authoritative. "Commander Alara?" Status report. Jax's blood ran cold. Commander Alara was the lost leader of Starsguard, the very person whose absence had doomed the fleet. He stammered, I'm not Commander Alara. I'm just Jax Hawk." Silence. Then the voice, tinged with something like hope, asked again, "Where's Alara?" "We have guarded her vessel for 1,000 cycles." The Guardians shifted their weight forward, awaiting an answer. Jax clenched his fists. He had come seeking salvage. Instead, he stood at the threshold of a destiny far greater and far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. The Celesta wreck was awake and bound by its ancient oath to its missing commander. Now, it seemed, Jax was the only one who could answer its call. The command deck thrummed with nascent power as Jax staggered back from the console, heart racing. Holographic overlays rippled across the domed transparisteel ceiling, depicting the Celesta wreck's sprawling frame and the dormant engines buried deep within its hull. Below, he could almost feel the ship's pulse, an ancient heartbeat echoing through layers of machinery and time. He shook off his awe and took a steadying breath. He had one shot to activate the primary systems without triggering any defense. Protocols. The holoscripts he'd pieced together spelled out a sequence: power routing, core ignition, safety locks. He let his fingers dance across the interface. Power routing, a lattice of glowing conduits traced from the main reactor to auxiliary grids. Jax selected the first node blue energy arcs, leapt across the console. He cycled through nodes one by one, their lights flickering from pale violet to deep cerulean as they synchronized. The ship's hum deepened, vibrating through his boots. Core ignition. The central holomap shifted to a three-dimensional rendering of the reactor chamber. Jax keyed in the ignition code, a sequence of 7 glyphs he'd memorized from Tattered. Holoprojects. Nothing happened. His stomach clenched. He re-entered the sequence. Still silence. Then, far beneath the deck, a distant roar shuddered through the floor plates. Pipes rattled, vents opened with pneumatic hiss, and a shaft of pale light shot upward through a grate at the room's far end. The core had answered his summons. Safety locks. As a precaution, Jax needed to override the ship's automated lockdown. Protocols, so he wouldn't be trapped. He navigated to the security sub-menu. Firewalls flickered past his view, red warning icons pulsing. Sweat beaded on his brow, but he tapped through them, isolating the lockdown routines and tagging them. For manual control, the red icons dimmed to amber. A sudden alarm's chirrup sliced through the deck's ambient hum. Jax whirled toward the pressure doors. Above the threshold, a tri-bar emblem flashed crimson. Unauthorized access. He cursed under his breath. Heat triggered the ship's defense sensors. Outside the chamber, footsteps of heavy metal on grated walkways echoed in unison. Jax's pulse thundered. He studied the holomap, a maintenance corridor looping around the deck's perimeter, leading back to the ship's spine. With the safety locks disabled, he could seal the doors behind him and buy time. He dashed toward a side hatch labeled Maintenance Access. The hatch slid open with a pneumatic hiss. He vaulted through and slammed it shut, sealing the deck behind him. In the cramped tunnel, red lights blinked, casting long shadows against the bulkheads. Panels overhead rattled as the sentinels on the deck strode past, their optics scanning every surface. Jacques pressed himself flat against the wall, chest heaving. He crept forward, guided by the glow of conduit pathways. The tunnel branched twice. The holomap directed him downward along a spiral stair that descended to the engine compartment. Each step rang hollow against the metal. At the bottom, a cavernous chamber opened up 5 stories tall, girded by colossal turbofusion turbines. The turbines lay silent, their spool housings coated in a film of cosmic dust. Jacques approached the control console mounted on a catwalk. Above the nearest engine, he tapped the ignition glyph again. Sparks danced as the console relayed his command to the engine's dot. At first, nothing. Then the nearest turbine shuddered, its blades creaking as they crept to life. A deep, resonant drone filled the chamber, growing in intensity as all 5 turbines spun up in sequence. Light spilled from maintenance bays, revealing cables thicker than tree trunks and coolant lines glowing with neon blue plasma. JX steadied himself on the railing as the chamber vibrated. He keyed a final command to align the thrust vectors. A holographic crosshair appeared on each engine's nozzle, locking them in synchronized orientation. Outside, the hull groaned as the ship shifted on its ancient supports. High above, the command deck lights flickered. Jacques glanced up at the grated ceiling, hearing faint echoes of the sentinel steps, but he forced himself to remain calm. All that remained was one last check. Initiation of flight control. He accessed the main flight suite via remote console. The readouts spun through diagnostics, attitude control, inertial dampeners, thruster calibration. Each bar graph climbed to full capacity. Finally, the prompt appeared. Engage flight systems? With a steady breath, Jacques selected confirm. A vibrational wave rolled through the ship as its gyroscopic stabilizers activated. The engine turbines roared in unison, sending tremors along the supports. Jacques felt the massive structure shift ever so slightly against the regolith of Ares. Moon. The maintenance hatch trembled under his feet. Behind the hull's transparent steel windows, the barren lunar landscape blurred as the supports retracted and the ship's landing gear lifted away. The Celesta wreck, dormant for centuries, was not only awake, it was ready to leave the surface. Jacques exhaled, adrenaline coursing through him as he watched the engines align for departure. The star-speckled void beckoned beyond the chambers. Opening. He'd awakened a giant, and now there was no turning back. The command deck trembled as the Celesta wreck shuddered through its first controlled lift. Jacques raced up the spiral stair back to the console chamber, every step echoing with urgency. He burst through the maintenance hatch just in time to see the sentinels array themselves once more in silent vigilance. Their cerulean optics tracked his approach dot above them. The hollow Lara's visage flickered, her ethereal form suspended in mid-air. The ghostly admiral's gaze swept the deck with calm authority. Jacques swallowed hard, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him, both mechanical and holographic. The lead sentinel's voice, metallic and unwavering, broke the tension. Identify yourself, intruder. State your rank and purpose. Jacques squared his shoulders. I am Jacques Hawk, scavenger of the Ember clans. I awakened this vessel to seek knowledge, not conflict. He glanced up at the Hololara. I mean no harm to your crew, if you still have one. The sentinels clicked their mandibles in unison. The Holoilura's specter regarded him with inscrutable eyes. Then, softer, her voice floated. Jacques Hawk. Your name resonates in the ship's memory banks. You carry the spark that reignites our mission. But you are not our commander. Who among you bears the Starsguard sigil? Jacques' heart pounded. He glanced at his worn leather jacket, the patch of the Ember Clan sewn above his heart. No sigil of the Starsguard. I have no claim, he admitted. But the Starsguard legend says that when the Alethea awakens, her rightful leader will guide her. If that leader is not here, then I will learn to lead. A hush fell. For a moment, all he heard was the hum of the engines and the quiet whirl of the hollow projector. Then the lead sentinel stepped forward, plating scraping against the deck. Training sequence. Initiate. Holographic targets sprang to life around the deck. Enemy fighters, boarding drones, and asteroid fragments casting simulated threats in flickering light. The sentinels moved with inhuman precision, deflecting and neutralizing each phantom with synchronized efficiency. Jax watched, transfixed, as the choreography of war unfolded. He realized the simulations were not merely tactical drills, but lessons imparting centuries of combat doctrine in moments. When the last target dissolved, the Hollow Elara spoke again. Well executed. You demonstrate courage under pressure. But leadership demands more than valor. She gestured, and a new hollow menu appeared before Jax. Ship's logs, crew manifests, mission directives. Clicking through the archives, Jax's eyes widened. The Starsguard fleet had been charged with exploring uncharted sectors, forging alliances with distant civilizations, and defending the galaxy's fragile peace. But a mysterious cataclysm had severed their communications. They vanished, presumed lost, leaving the Alethea adrift. Our commander, Elara Voss, led the final charge to protect the Perella Accord. She sacrificed herself to save the fleet. The Hollow Elara's voice grew solemn. Her echo remains in the ship's core. Should a new commander arise, you must awaken her spirit. Jax traced a path through the directives, finding an entry titled Project Echo, Transfer of Command. It detailed a ritual, merging a living mind with the ship's AI core, forging a bond that would restore the lost commander's strategic insight. He swallowed. The ritual sounded perilous, melding flesh and machine risked losing oneself in the digital abyss. Yet he felt its pull. This was the destiny the ship and its guardians sought to fulfill. I'll do it, he said, voice steady. Show me the way. The Hollow Elara's form brightened, projecting a pulsating node above the main console. Connect to the core interface, Commander Hawk. Place your neural link there. Be warned, once connected, you cannot turn away. Her eyes softened. But should you succeed, Elara Voss's guidance will be yours to command. Jax approached the console, heart pounding as he felt the ship's ancient essence thrumming through the metal beneath his boots. With trembling hands, he affixed a neural amplifier to his temple, a relic he'd scavenged from an abandoned cybernetics lab. The sentinels knelt in reverence, their optics dimming as though to shield him from the enormity of the moment. He took a deep breath and activated the link. A torrent of memories flooded his mind, holographic echoes of Elara's final battle. The roar of plasma torpedoes, the pleas of dying comrades. Pain lanced through his skull as star maps and tactical algorithms overran his thoughts. He clenched his teeth, struggling to maintain his identity amid the cascading data. Then, just as he felt himself slipping, a calm voice resonated within. Jax, remember why you came. It was Elara, her living essence infused with the ship's AI, guiding him back from the brink. He grasped the console, focusing on the sensation of his own heartbeat. Layer by layer, the chaos subsided, replaced by a harmonious resonance, his will entwined with hers, forging a new command consciousness. Jax opened his eyes. The Hollow Elara now stood beside him, fully materialized in brilliant lucency. Welcome, Commander Hawk Voss. The Starsguard mission continues. Around him, the sentinels rose, weapons ports closing in salute. The Celesta wreck, reborn under dual leadership, thrummed with renewed purpose. Together, Boy and Commander would chart a course through the stars, seeking the lost remnants of a forgotten fleet and the promise of a galaxy waiting to be saved. The engines thrummed like living thunder as the Alethea broke free from Ares' moon. Through the broad transparisteel viewport, Jocks watched the gray horizon recede, the barren landscape giving way to the inky void spangled with distant suns. He felt the ship's heartbeat in his veins, an echo of the fusion core merging with his own pulse. Around him, the Sentinels stood at ease, their cerulean optics now warm with recognition. JX Voss inhaled deeply. He wore the dual mantle of the boy who dared and the commander who would lead. At his side, the fully realized hologram of Alara Voss shimmered in silent support. Together, they faced the central holomap, where a lattice of unexplored sectors stretched out like a challenge. Course plot required. Commander, intoned Sentinel Alpha, its synthetic baritone calm and precise. Jax's fingers drifted across the holocontrols. He overlaid the mission directives they'd unearthed. Locate surviving Starsguard vessels, re-establish the Perella Accord, and investigate the cataclysm that severed the fleet. Each waypoint pulsed as he designated priority targets. Set trajectory for the Kestrel Expanse, he said, voice steady. Maximum impulse, but hold for signature scans at Sector X-17. The holomap flickered as the route arced through uncharted space. Course plotted. Engage when ready. He glanced at Alara's apparition. She inclined her head. Remember, Jax, the fleet we rebuild begins with each alliance we forge. Trust in them as you trust yourself. Jax nodded and tapped the final glyph. The Aletheas. Engines flared, propelling them through the silent gulf. Within moments, the stars stretched into lines of light, and the ship leapt into SLIPSTR-EM. First contact when the slipstream collapsed. Sensors immediately detected debris fields and faint energy signatures. Jax Voss convened an impromptu council in the briefing chamber, where the Sentinels and the Hala Alara assembled around a circular dais. Recon drones report an automated convoy drifting near, weapons disabled, but life readings flickering. Reported Sentinel Beta, a holographic drone feed displayed, half-buried hulls and shattered solar panels. Jax examined the readouts. These convoys carried diplomats and colonists aboard the Astria's Grace. They must have been caught in the Cataclysm's fallout. He turned to Alara. Would you have sent a rescue party? Her ethereal form softened. Always. Save the innocent first, then seek justice for the lost. Then that is our mission. Launch a recovery team, Jax ordered. Sergeant Bryn and Sentinel Gamma, prepare the shuttle. I'll accompany the retrieval crew. Within minutes, the shuttle Aurora detached from Alethea's bay, carrying Jax Voss, Bryn in her flight suit, and Sentinel Gamma standing watch. As they approached the drifting convoy, eerie silence enveloped them. Hull breaches gaped open, and the once grand ships lay cold and empty. Boarding party. Stay sharp, Jax whispered, feet touching the grated deck. Sensors picked up faint biometric survivors in stasis pods, their life signs weak but stable. Bryn knelt by a pod console. They preserved themselves when systems failed. Engaging revival sequence. Soft hisses echoed as stasis fields dissipated. One by one, colonists opened their eyes, confusion and relief mingling on their faces. Jax stepped forward. You're safe now. We're here to help. Through broken corridors and flickering lights, Jax led them back to the Aurora. Bryn offered thermal blankets and ration packs. Gamma stood guard, its optics scanning for threats. As the shuttle lifted off to rejoin the Alethea, Jax allowed himself a small smile. This was the first of many lives they would save, and the first step toward rebuilding hope, forging new alliances back. Aboard the Alethea, the recovered colonists swarmed the medical bays. Alara convened with Jox in the command days, her eyes bright with approval. You honor the Starsguard tradition. These people will speak of the Alethea's rebirth far and wide. Jox tapped open a fresh star chart. Our next waypoint is the Aurora Cluster. It's rumored to host the descendants of the Novan Confederacy, once staunch allies of the Starsguard. He traced a glowing line through the nebular clouds. Proceed, Commander. He turned to the Sentinels. Prepare the diplomatic protocols. I want messages of peace sent ahead of our arrival, inviting representatives aboard. The robots bowed. In precise unity, as the ship maneuvered toward its next destination, Jax retreated to the holoprojector. There, he and Alara pored over mission logs and alliance treaties, studying centuries-old customs and languages. He absorbed every nuance, determined to prove himself worthy of the Starsguard legacy. Outside the viewport, nebulas blossomed in violet and gold. A new dawn of exploration was unfolding, one that blended Jax's daring spirit with Alara's seasoned wisdom. The horizon beckons, late into the ship's first galactic night. Jax stood alone on the command dais, listening to the ebb and flow of engine harmonics. Alara's hologram hovered nearby, silent and steadfast. He raised a hand to the viewport. We've only begun, he murmured. But I can feel it. The galaxy is watching, waiting for us. The stars beyond shimmered as if in reply. In that moment, Jax understood. The Aletheia was not just a vessel. It was a promise of redemption, unity, and wonder. Drawing a steady breath, he closed his eyes and spoke aloud. To the lost, Commander, and all who dreamed of peace among the stars, we carry your light forward. The Aletheia's lights pulsed in affirmation. Their course was set, their purpose clear. Together, a boy and a legend would chart the path toward a brighter future, one star at a time.